Now we've written our verse function and we've tested it and we feel reasonably confident that that works. And we had already written this code here to simply print the verse for that number. And so let's give it a shot. If I run bottles, by default, it uses 10. And so here we see it's singing 10 bottles of beer on the wall and then 9 bottles of beer on the wall. That looks good. Let's sing 1. I have to say, sorry, N1. And it should sing the last bottle. It should not allow us to use 0 or any negative number. So we know that that works. So we have good input. We know we can sing one verse. We can sing 10. We can sing 2. We can sing 1. That looks good. Now we need to sing all the numbers starting at number and going down to 1. So how do we do that? Well, we could use, for instance, a for loop. For in range, and we talked about this before, that if we go from args num down to 1, stepping by -1, then that should, let's just print in and verify what that looks like. And for the moment, I'm going to comment that out. And if we run this, it prints 10 down to 2. It does not print the last number because the start and the stop are the first two parameters to range, and the stop is not included. So we actually have to change that to 0. Even though we're not going to sing the 0th verse, we need to say it's 0, so it will go down to 1. So here's 10 down to 1. That works. And so if we, instead of printing in, we print verse for in, that could be a way of generating our song. So how can we do that? That looks, it generates the verses correctly, but there needs to be an extra new line in between each verse because that doesn't look good. That's not readable. So if I were to say end is equal to another new line, I can make it 2 new lines, then that almost gets us to the end, but you see it puts an extra new line at the end. Really what we want is 2 new lines in between all the verses, and at the end there should just be 1. So we've seen this pattern before. Rather than printing them like this, we can actually build up, all of the verses as it's going to be some sort of a list, for instance, that we could append to. So rather than just printing it, we could say verses dot append the verse for this. And then if we, at the end here, just print verses, let's see what it looks like. It should be a list of, these verses. We don't want to print the list. We want to print those joined on 2 new lines. Join those verses. That should get us what we want. So that's a way of putting 2 new lines in between. And if I run make test, I believe this should pass all of my tests. Yes, so that looks good. It tests for 1, it tests for 2, then it draws a random number, and it has some a way of testing there inside. So that works. And next I'm going to show you how to take this same idea that we've seen so many times in so many exercises, where we're initializing some like list or a string, and then we iterate through some arguments, and then we build up that thing that we're building. We add to it, and then in some way we use that thing that we built, that aggregation. I'm going to show you how to code that both as a list comprehension and then as a map, and we'll see that again it takes far fewer lines of code. I think that there are fewer places to make mistakes when you use fewer lines of code, and so I'll try to convince you that while this works and it's quite effective, there are slightly cleaner ways to write this that I think make for more robust code.